It is through his person and by his work that we are able to be justified in the sight of God. And when Paul explains that, he declares as integral to the gospel the idea that we are justified by faith and not by the works of the law. And so the church has confessed since the Reformation that our justification is by faith alone, through Christ alone. In fact, the term sola fide, which is the Latin shorthand for the doctrine of justification, and simply means, sola means alone, fide is the word for faith, that we are justified by faith alone. Those two words are shorthand for the broader statement. To be justified by faith alone means that we are justified by placing our trust in Christ and in Christ alone. So that by faith alone really means in and by and through Christ alone. And with respect to faith, the Reformers taught that faith is the sole instrument or the instrumental cause of our justification, meaning by it the means or the way by which I receive the benefits of the work of Christ. That what Christ did for us is received by faith. What Christ accomplished, you cannot earn. You can't buy. You can't deserve. You can't merit. The only way you will receive the benefits of the life and death of Jesus is by putting your faith and trust in him and in him alone. Now, in the denial, we read this: we deny that any person can believe the biblical gospel and at the same time reject the apostolic teaching of justification by faith alone in Christ alone. Now, this speaks to the greatest controversy in the history of Christendom, to the controversy that erupted in the 16th century and provoked the Protestant Reformation. The whole debate in the 16th century focused on the gospel. That's why evangelicals are called evangelicals, because they believed that in the doctrine of sola fide, or of justification by faith alone, what they were contending for was nothing less than the biblical and apostolic gospel itself. Now, the dispute between Protestants and the Roman Catholic Church in the 16th century, in essence, was a dispute about what the gospel is. The Roman Catholic Church rejected and condemned sola fide, justification by faith alone. Said that is not the gospel, but that their teaching on justification was in fact the real gospel. Well, of course, Paul tells us in his letter to the Galatians, when he's dealing with the Judaizing heresy, that we are not to embrace any other gospel than that one which is set forth in the New Testament. And the apostle says, if anyone preaches unto you any other gospel than that which you have received, even if it's an angel from heaven, let him be anathema, anathema, damned or cursed. For he had said earlier that there are those who are proclaiming another gospel, but there is no other gospel. There is only one gospel, and that one gospel is the doctrine of justification by faith alone. So the point of this denial, following Paul in Galatians and the reformers in the 16th century, is this: that if you say you believe in the gospel, but you at the same time deny justification by faith alone, then what you believe is not the biblical gospel. It's another gospel which is not another gospel, because there is no other gospel. Whatever else it isn't the good news of the New Testament, and in the final analysis must be deemed to be bad news. Again, this is a statement that is restrictive and narrow, but no more restrictive and no more narrow than the apostolic teaching itself that declares emphatically there is only one gospel. And it is the gospel of justification by faith alone, in Christ alone. These affirmations are essential to the biblical gospel, to the true gospel, and without them, you do not have the very essence of the gospel. In our day, as in the 16th century, there have been serious controversies about the doctrine of justification. And much of that controversy, I am convinced, is based on such a neglect for this classic biblical doctrine of justification that we have become widely ignorant of the meaning of the doctrine of justification. And we happily go through life affirming the gospel, yet at the same time being confused or negligent with respect to the doctrine of justification by faith. This is a very precarious position to be in, because the New Testament links justification by faith alone inseparably with the gospel. So that if we don't understand justification, we don't really understand the gospel. And if we are going to preach the gospel, we must preach justification by faith alone, because it is essential, as the Apostle Paul indicates in Galatians, to the biblical gospel itself. Any gospel that avoids, neglects, or denies justification by faith alone is a muddled gospel, which is no gospel. So I urge you, as you celebrate the gospel and say that you believe the gospel, that you get the gospel right. And that means a careful understanding of the biblical doctrine of justification.